And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM this Monday morning. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after one of the greatest sporting weekends in the history of the planet. France are the world champions. The Super 8s have begun a bit of a damn squib. The cobblestones of Roubaix took some toll in the Tour de France. There was nearly a 59 on the European Tour and loads more happening as well. As ever, if you want to get in touch with us, drop us a line. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. At Off the Ball AM is the official Twitter account of this specific show. There are no other Twitter accounts associated with this show, despite what you might have seen over the weekend. I'm joking. Who in their right mind will be arsed making up a fake Twitter account for this show? Maybe you, Eoin.
Maybe me. I don't get the reference.
Doesn't matter. How are you?
Very well.
You're not. You can't be very well. You're putting up a front here. You were in Croke Park reporting for Off the Ball yesterday, and there were no angry dispatches. There was no ranting on Twitter. There was no the referee wrote us. There was no those Galway bastards, and there was no even Yarrow we'll be grand.
Well, I did say I got my Galway bastards line in before the start of the season. I said that Galway would become the team that everybody would grow to hate in this year's championship, which is the biggest compliment you can pay a team. And there is one reason for that. There is the Paddy Tally effect. I mean, he's now beaten Kerry with 3 different counties, with Tyrone, with Down, and now with Galway in the championship. And there was the stench of Down 2010 off this game yesterday. There was the stench to a certain extent of Donegal 2012 off yesterday, where Kerry looked so flat, but they're flat because the opposition punctured them perfectly. And you got to give Galway every credit. They were by far the better team yesterday. They shouldn't have won by 3 points. They should have won by 7 or 8. If they had their shooting boots on in the first half and in the second or in the third quarter of the match, then they would have been out of sight much earlier on. So there's no excuses with that regard. The reason why I'm not overly disappointed is because literally you could be blushing big time in 7 days' time if Kerry come away from Clonus with a win. I think the atmosphere played a big part in what happened at the weekend. It was really dull in Croke Park yesterday. There was numbers of 30,000 reported there, but obviously everybody left after the first game. Everybody who was there for the first game went to watch the World Cup. And there just wasn't a sense of peril about the day. It was like, oh, well, if we lose, we're back next weekend. I don't really feel that the players had that in their minds, but it definitely seeped into the atmosphere.
Just looking at the prices for next week, Kerry 9-4 on. I would not be putting my money or your money on.
No, don't.
I might put some of your money on, but I wouldn't put any of my money.
No, neither would I.
3 points spread for Monaghan at home after that performance. I thought Monaghan were really good. Actually, Monaghan had a bit of the yips in the second half, but they were clearly the superior team, and they were creating chance after chance after chance. In that first half, they had 2 wides and they clearly controlled the game. If they'd been as efficient in the second half, and there's no reason for the efficiency, it wasn't brilliant tackling or any of that kind of stuff. I would be worried if I was Kerry after yesterday's performance.
When you mentioned
they're going to win.
I do think they're going to win. Yeah, of course I do. Dick Clerkin is writing in the Irish Independent this morning that Kerry have gone backwards. He cites the Mayo All-Ireland semi-final replay last year, and taking that game into account and last games into account, Kerry have supposedly gone backwards. What about everything that happened in between? What about putting up 350 in the first 2 championship games this year, albeit against crap opposition? If you're going to cite Mayo in the replay last year, you've got to mention the fact that only 7 players who started that day started yesterday. It's an entirely new team. I don't know how you can come out of nowhere and say Kerry have gone backwards. This is a team that is going forwards. Are they going as quickly forwards as some people might like? Maybe not. It's the rate of the acceleration that you can dispute. To say Kerry have gone backwards is a nonsense point, I think. And it's ironic that a person from Monaghan would say that the very week before a Kerry backlash could be coming in their own backyard. I could be well off the mark on this.
So you think that's going to be pinned up in the dressing room wall?
Well, if you're going to pin something up in the dressing room wall, well, that's the thing to pin up. I think it's just a strange thing to say. I think Kerry, I wouldn't say they choked yesterday. Their sense, all their level of skill, particularly in front of goal, in terms of composure and all that, just abandoned them. It was ironic that it was a teenager who was their best player, and David Clifford in his first senior championship match played outstanding and was by far Kerry's best player. Paul Genney wasn't great, Paul Murphy wasn't great, David Moran wasn't great, their kickouts were terrible. There's a lot of things right there that are big upshoots next week if they get them correct. That's a 7 or 8 point swing straight away if they get those things correct. And with the players they have in those positions, they're proven track records. The only one of those 4 areas I didn't mention is Shane Murphy, who doesn't have a track record in that area, but we've seen what he's done with Kerry before. We've seen what he's done with Dr. Crokes before. He has the skill to be better.
Can I not just ask though, are you saying that they're going to get better on the basis that this is Kerry and Kerry always get better? Because what's the evidence that they're actually going to improve from last week to this week?
Well, the evidence that they're going to, the evidence that they're going to improve, there is no evidence that they're going to improve. The evidence is that they underperformed yesterday. There is no question about that.
As the first time they come up against a good team in the championship.
Well, I don't think we've seen as poor performance collectively. I don't think you've seen a performance from Kerry where, as I say, Gady, Anne Moore and Paul Murphy all underperform at the very same time in such dramatic circumstances. In such dramatic fashion, I should say.
Nothing to do with the fact that it's Galway who caused that.
Maybe it is, but like at the same...
So therefore, that's something more fundamental. Some players play badly in individual circumstances, that's fine, but everybody playing badly at the same time would suggest that there's a reason for it, and the reason might have been that the opposition were really good, and the fact that the opposition were really good is something that the next opposition can go, oh, they were good here, 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 and here. We'll do something fairly similar, and away we go. Maybe it is.
All will become very, very clear next week. It just felt like such an anomaly yesterday. Credit, as I say, has to go to Galway. They were excellent in parts of yesterday's match and completely deserved it. But like, obviously, it's next weekend. The irony is that it was such a terrible weekend in general. Not a terrible weekend, but a fairly disappointing weekend to start the Super 8s. The irony is that makes next weekend a salivating prospect. It makes it amazing. Like, next weekend in Clonus is going to be sensational because Kerry lost yesterday, and Monaghan, I thought, and parts yesterday were brilliant. Niall Kearns in midfield, what an addition he's been. Like, people were talking about Monaghan 2 or 3 years ago saying, isn't it great for a county with such a small population to have achieved so much, and I kind of felt that they were at the peak. Well, Monaghan are getting better. They're better than they were a couple of years ago. This is their best chance ever. Well, not ever. The best chance in 30 years to make an All-Ireland semi-final, you would feel. And I am surprised at that price. But I do think that Kerry have a serious shot next week. I just feel that there's people rushing in, just dying to go in two-footed on this team. Give it 7 days, and I'll be with you going in two-footed. Just let me have another look at this.
Yeah, okay. We're going to talk a bit more about all of the weekend's Gaelic football action. Bryan McGuigan's going to join us to talk about the rebirth of Tyrone as genuine All-Ireland contenders. We'll get the Kerry view as well, and we'll bring you through everything else that happened over the course of the weekend. We're going to talk with John Duggan in a couple of minutes' time. But before we get to the newspapers, we do need to look back to look forward. Sometimes it's important that you reflect as an organisation on the things that you've said in a public forum in advance of a major tournament, or even in the middle of a major tournament. Something like this, for example. So who have they got next?
France, Saturday. They're going to beat France on Saturday.
Oh, I don't know. France don't look very good, do they?
Well, they look quite poor, in fact. They look bad. They don't look anywhere near the sum of their parts, which is always the fear when you talk about this French team. And people, for some reason, had the opinion that it didn't quite happen for them in Euro 2016, despite the fact that they slalomed their way through a couple of magnificent results in front of their own crowd. They thought that they could go on to the next level. They thought that the cohesion between the team would be improved, and lo and behold, that hasn't happened. And Argentina dumped them out this Saturday, despite the fact that Argentina have a lot of holes in their own team.
I couldn't actually hear a word that was said there because Eoin was too busy wailing and gnashing of teeth.
You've got to warn me about that sort of stuff. It was a bad take. It was a bad prediction. I'll put my hands up and say I got it wrong.
Fair enough.
Got it very badly wrong. France are going to dominate the world from now on.
They're not bad, are they?
They're going to take over everything. The thing is that I do kind of feel for Kylian Mbappe the way everything he does now is like, well, he's not the first person to do that because Pele did that before. It's like if he reaches 50 million Instagram followers, it's like, well, he's only the second teenager to reach 50 million Instagram followers after Pele, of course. It's like everything he does will be put in that class. But yeah, I got it badly wrong about France. I thought they were disappointing in the first game. I don't think anybody who had really gone...
stop digging.
Who had really lifted them up before the tournament was like, oh yeah, I'm really, really assured of my prediction there after the opening performance, and that's when that video was taken from. So yeah, that's my defence, to be fair.
Yeah,
and also I kind of have a bit of prejudice against France. I kind of don't like their notions, you know, Ger.
In particular, after Thierry Henry, or just generally?
Thierry Henry would have kind of hammered it home for sure. Yeah, but as I say, it's all over now. The world is French, and we're just living in it. Yeah, we'll get to John Duggan in Russia for one last time in just a little while. But now it's time for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Okay, so we're going to start with the Irish Times right here. Just making sure. Oh yeah, we do have a PDF of this. France elicit grudging respect rather than love. That's the headline over Ken Early's piece in Moscow. Jury out in grand football experiment. Opening weekend looked like the championship, but felt like the league. I mean, that's an interesting take from Keith Duggan, because it did feel like we didn't quite have the massive... I mean, a bomb went off, I think, in championship terms with Galway's win, but because Kerry aren't out, it doesn't really matter that much. What it does mean is that if Kerry come through, almost certainly they're up against Dublin in a quarter-final? Because you would expect Galway to win that group now.
You would expect them to. Like, they do have to go to Newbridge next weekend, which I wouldn't be writing off as a dead cert win for Galway at this point. And also as well, like, the way... Like, when you look at Monaghan yesterday as well, they're not going to be easily beaten. Like, Rory Beggins, like, we've mentioned him time and time again on this show, but he is an outstanding weapon that Monaghan have. It's handy, being able to start your attacks on the opposition 45 sometimes, and Rory Beggin, when he nails those kickouts, can allow you to do that. So I wouldn't be kind of saying that Galway are dead certs to win this group. I think Monaghan have a serious chance of topping this group as well.
Interesting column from the back of the Irish Times this morning from Brian O'Connor. We don't believe in the tour, but we're still glued to it, which is basically the point that we've both been making over the last while. It's like once you tune into the beauty and the grandeur of the actual event itself, part of you kind of disassociates yourself with the fact that you can't really believe what's happening. And
it's pure theatre.
Yeah. Now, obviously that's a terrible way of looking at sport, because you kind of still at some point want to believe that you're spending your time watching something that's worthwhile, and that's hard, but that tension will always be there, I suspect. On to the Irish Independent. Oh, sorry about that, bumping off the sorry Mike. Galway grasp the nettle. It's an amazing photograph on the back of the Irish Independent sports section this morning. That's Damien Comer, one-handed, reaching for the ball over Jason Foley. You can see the athleticism of Comer. It's like we're really starting to see some of the great Irish athletes reaching full peak of their athletic abilities in Gaelic football and putting it on display week in, week out. And I think that's going to be one of the other fringe benefits here, is that we see these types of things happen much more, and players get fitter and they get better and they get more conditioned, and suddenly they're actually playing the sport at a much higher level. We've gone from having 4 quarterfinals to 12 quarterfinal matches. Over the course of those games, players are going to get better and better. Maybe not in season 1, but certainly seasons 2 and season 3, as they become properly conditioned to the fact that you could be playing your 8th, 9th and 10th game of the championship season. So that's
a top-class trolling from Kevin Walsh yesterday as well, taking Damien Comer off. It was like, we don't need him to beat Kerry.
And then the goal was scored after that.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, oh, yeah, that's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Well,
game was close enough at that stage.
It was actually, yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe it was purely tactical, because it wasn't the most amazing game he's ever had. Foley was actually doing a decent enough job with him. But the way I saw it, I was like, Galway backed themselves here. They backed the squad, and the squad they have.
Yeah, okay, so I've done the Irish Times, the Irish Examiner, Pride and Joy. It's John Kiley, the Limerick manager. Kiley's Limerick and 45-year championship hoodoo against Kilkenny. Almost all of the other hoodoos over the course of the weekend. Monaghan breaking a bit of their Croke Park duck. Obviously that meant Kildare's recent form there was maintained, but a phenomenal down the stretch win for the Limerick hurlers, the type of win that suddenly gives them confidence in everything they've been doing, that gives that whole management system a belief and frees them from the shackles of what's happened in Munster, where there was this kind of sense that, I didn't buy it, but it was definitely out there that having not got over the Munster situation, that the struggle for them was going to be to recapture their earlier season form, and then they've done it, and suddenly who wants to play Limerick? Yeah,
well, that's the thing. I do wonder if, in hindsight this year, we're talking to ourselves saying third place in Munster is the best place you can finish in these round-robin groups. That should the Leinster final go to a replay once again next year, suddenly you've got a tired Kilkenny or Galway or Wexford coming up against you, or potentially next year Dublin coming up against you, and they're coming straight off that replay the week previous to that game. Limerick had their tails up from some performances earlier in the year. The Clare game, I think, was one that they lost. But like 1973, Brian Cody was a 19-year-old wing-back the last time Limerick beat Kilkenny. Like, this Limerick team is on the up. That is going to be one hell of an All-Ireland semi-final against Cork.
Yeah, I think irrespective almost, even if it goes to replay, like that whole sense of not preparing for the Munster final, going away, licking your wounds, beating whoever it is coming up, which you're automatically, everybody knows that's going to happen. So you don't have that trauma or the kind of massive gap between the Munster final and the All-Ireland semi-final. You're playing games, especially when you're a young team. So I think it's all coming up Limerick at the minute. That's the World Cup, magnifique World Cup glory for France in Moscow. That's the Examiner sports section. Did we do the Times Ireland edition? We did not. Here we go. This is what it feels like to win the World Cup. That's Paul Pogba. And the gold looks particularly golden of the World Cup. It's almost like it's been recently painted again. It's pretty shiny. It's very nice. I mean, it is a nice trophy.
It is. It's
As
beautiful.
trophies go, it's kind of all the other trophies. No, this one, yeah,
It's perfect. It just gleams everywhere you look.
it's pretty good. And then reigning champions, because it's raining, and they're the champions. Hey, see what the Racing Post did? Got to get up early to beat the Racing Post. And then record breaker, Mullins becomes winning most amateurs. He hits 546. That's an incredible achievement. 546 wins as an amateur, and then Mazar to miss the rest of the season. So we get the story of Patrick Mullins' 546 wins. If you read the Racing Post today, they've talked about his phenomenal achievement there.
Back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is France rule the world. And I look at this picture and I wonder, how could I possibly have written off this French team? And I see the great Olivier Giroud there, now a World Cup winner. I've got no idea at all why I might have written them off at any point. They beat Croatia 4-2 to win the Jules Rimet trophy yesterday. The back page of the Herald is "That won't do," says Jim. Gavin warns of test Dubs will face against Tyrone. They're in Oman next weekend. That is going to be the tighter weekend. It is going to be fantastic. Hopefully it's a bit of a better prospect than the All-Ireland semi-final last year.
No, it's not Jules Rimet.
Has it been changed?
Yeah, Jules Rimet is the one that got...
No, it's the FIFA World Cup trophy.
Yeah.
I was literally told that just before I came on air, actually, and it just went in one ear and out the other. The back page of the Mirror is
That's why
Deja.
the line is Jules Rimet still gleaming, because it's like, you know the trophy went missing that gets rescued by the dog?
Yeah.
That's Jules
In
Rimet.
66.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Jules Rimet gets replaced by the FIFA. They need to come up with a new name for it. I wonder, the Kylian Mbappe, the Pele trophy? The Kylian Mbappe trophy? Who knows?
Maradona would be a bit pissed off, but screw him.
Screw Maradona. You know, he's getting paid enough to sit in the premium level of stadiums in Kazan and Samara. The back page of the Mirror is Deja Blue. Pogba helps France to win it again. France 4, Croatia 2. And Treaty are flying Kai. Limerick 27, Kilkenny 122. And it's scary for Kerry, but Tribe impressive.
Yeah, I think it is scary for Kerry. Ronan Todd says, really and truly now, what in God's name could be salivating about a trip to Clonus to play Monaghan? I know there's a need to blow this poor Super 8 concept up, but come on, a Malachy O'Rourke team involved in a salivating match. Hashtag GA, hashtag OTBAM, says Ronan Todd.
Maybe he might be right. Like, I guess I'm more referring to the occasion, that like it is a unique occasion for any Kerry team to go up to Clonus in the middle of July. Like, it's so unique. But in terms of a contest, it's probably going to be a good game as well. It's an interesting one that Monaghan are coming in with like 2 points clear of Kerry, and suddenly it's not like a fear of losing, or maybe it is a fear of losing. And how do Monaghan approach this? Is it all men behind the ball? Is it a defensive approach?
Yeah, they'll be exactly the way they play Kildare.
It probably will be, you know, but
They're not going to change the style now.
The whole kind of context around it just feels very different to like your classic All-Ireland quarter-final, and it's a far cry from that. Whereas yesterday felt like an All-Ireland quarter-final, but just with an added... Do you know what it actually...
Nothing on the line.
Yeah, it felt like one of those double headers that they used to have for the league semi-finals. That's what yesterday felt like. It just felt that there was big consequence, there was big reward for winning, but...
If those games had been at provincial grounds, everybody would have loved them.
Yeah.
I think. Like, if that Kildare match had been played out in front of a crowd in Clonus or in Newbridge, it would have been sensational in terms of the drama. Unfortunately, because it's played out, you can hear the shouts from the crowd, people are like, there's no intensity in this game, but there was.
Yeah.
Monaghan will relish the chance of knocking Kerry out of the Super 8. Could be a graveyard for Fitzmaurice, says Frank Sheridan. Could be. I mean, at this stage, it really could be. It's like, it is shit or bust for Kerry next weekend. It's all about the Dubs and Galway and Limerick, says Trevor Dargan this morning. Yeah, I mean, the Limerick situation slightly... I didn't watch that game because I was watching the Kildare Monaghan. You were at the Kildare Monaghan Kerry game, so we're catching up on that this week, but we'll do proper justice to it a little bit later on. We'll get you some of the thoughts from Tommy Walsh from yesterday as well.
Well, just from watching it back, like, it was just the constant ebb and flow of the game. When Richie Hogan is putting you ahead late in the game, you're thinking, that is done. The goose is cooked, as they say, and Kilkenny will be powering through to an All-Ireland semi-final. That script, for the first time I can ever remember, has just been ripped up, and it's been ripped up multiple times. The thing is, I think yesterday kind of asserts Galway as even more definite All-Ireland champions. I know we were talking about it all last week, and Kilkenny have ripped up the script that was set to be Kilkenny versus Galway 3.0 in the context of the 2018 All-Ireland Championship, at which point I thought Kilkenny might have beaten them.
And Cork are probably pretty happy about Kilkenny being gone as well.
They probably are. Like they will be favourites going up against Limerick, but it's this Limerick team is such. They brought such energy to the championship over the past couple of years, let alone this team. And this is it's. I don't want to compare them to Monaghan in football because they're vastly different. But in terms of the peak Limerick that we saw 5 years ago when they had those great teams when they won the Munster Championship, it kind of felt like, well, this is a great Limerick team. Can they push on and win an All-Ireland Championship? And then the game in the rain happens a year later and you're like, well, there's always going to be Kilkenny. But then a new generation of hurlers come through and they've breathed completely new, fresh life into this Limerick setup. And they're better than they were 5 years ago, clearly. Excuse me, and they're far better placed to potentially win an All-Ireland. It would be brilliant if they went all the way. It's going to be very, very tough. Beating Cork and then Galway to win it after beating Kilkenny will be one hell of a memorable way to win an All-Ireland Championship. The back page of the Irish Daily Star is French Kiss, Deschamps hails his world champs. And the back page of the Sun this morning, the Irish Sun, it's Didier Deschamps, tout la la for French Kings. And Kelly men, oh so plucky, says Jason Byrne. Limerick 27 points, Kilkenny 122. Just a couple of the UK back pages then. The back page of The Guardian is Golden Generation. It's Kylian Mbappe celebrating with the trophy there. And the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is France reigns supreme. Let's have a look at some of the French pages, back pages. L'Équipe this morning, the front page of L'Équipe is this.
Un bonheur éternel.
The eternal happiness. Is that what that means? You don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why I presume you're always fluent at French. The other one we wanted to show you, I think, was the comparison with 1998. Pour l'éternité and un bonheur éternel. You know, there we go. I'm not sure that they mean the same things, but just written in a different way.
So what they did on Sunday morning was they reprinted, I think, the cover of the 98 one as like inspiration to the 2018 team, and then it's like, so eternal. It is eternity for these footballers. I think maybe the team that wins the first one are the ones who always have the public love and admiration, unless the second team wins another one, and yet you wouldn't back against them because, well, they're so young and so brilliant, and Kylian Mbappe, it looks like it's going to be one of those strikers who actually benefits from more playing time. So the L'Équipe player ratings is next. 3 for Kante. They're such assholes. Jesus. 4 for Matuidi. That's unbelievable. Pavard, about right, 5. Varane only gets a 6. Lloris gets a 5. Okay, so there's a mistake there, but like Rakitic gets 7 instead of Modric. I mean, so 5.1, 5.6 is the average. They're basically saying 2 crap teams played out a mediocre game. Griezmann gets 8, Mbappe gets 7, Giroud gets 4. I mean, Giroud did exactly the job he was supposed to do, right? But they are harsh bastards.
Yeah.
Deschamps gets an 8 though. I mean, that's like, his team gets 5.6, but the coach gets an 8 for winning that.
Well, you know, for eternity and all that, he was the captain of the first winning side. I'm going to do L'Équipe kind of, do they have a grudge against this current team? It's like, you know,
you win the World Cup, you're on that biggest high of your life, and you open the paper and you go, 3? I got 3.
Somehow I don't think French players are going to do that this morning. Yeah, like the last, I think the final just kind of capped off exactly what the tournament was. It was just pure drama. It was like moments of controversy without saying, oh, that was a game that you can kind of pin up and say this was the most high quality game we've ever seen. There was, of course, moments of high quality, like the Pogba pass to Mbappe before he actually scores. But then, of course, there is the fact that he needs 2 attempts to actually finish it off, kind of epitomised, I think, the World Cup as a whole. Like, I don't think you can say it was the highest quality World Cup we've ever seen. In terms of drama, it's probably the best I can remember.
It could well be the highest quality World Cup we've ever seen, because World Cups aren't actually about quality. They're
no,
about
of course
one team's best players, one country's best players beating another, and that's never going to be like 23 amazing players in one squad, because it just isn't. And I think that the drama is really the drama and the fact that it matters so much to these players. I accidentally was listening to some TalkSport last night to see what they were talking about.
That happens.
And I'm pretty sure Dean Saunders or somebody said that Pogba's pass was a long hoofed ball forward, that Mbappe is so good he made it look like a pass.
Oh my God.
I was like, what are you talking about? It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Oh my, that's...
so there you go. That's
just untrue and false.
So this is the French players where they were in 1998. You can scroll straight down to Kylian Mbappe, bottom left. He's a fetus in that one. So
still smiling. He's always smiling, Kylian Mbappe. The
Oh,
sickening happiness.
one last time. One last time. Good morning, John.
Ger and Owen, good morning. How you doing?
How was it?
That was an amazing day. Extremely special occasion and a cherished memory for life. And can you say it's the World Cup final?
So my experience of this is that as the tournament progresses, the media from other countries starts to go home, and actually it gets a little bit easier to get tickets for the big games. How much of a scramble was it to get a ticket for the final?
Well, you apply through a portal, a kind of an online system, and on Friday it came through that I'd been approved. But I'd been approved. I've been approved for every game. The first two games, Russia, Saudi Arabia and Argentina, Iceland, I'd not been approved for, and I had to get them on a wait list, and I got them with half an hour to spare, but the rest of the tournament was fine. So look, I think the Irish, I think they treat it as a World Cup, so they're very fair to other nations that necessarily haven't qualified. And obviously the FAI had a significant role to play, and we thank them for their support as well.
My overriding memory of getting a ticket for the World Cup final in 2006, I was accredited as well, was like there was actually a physical crush of people. There was a person handing out physical tickets. There was no portal back in the day, and there was literally a physical crush. And it turned out there was loads of tickets, but the way it was like there was an hour left before kickoff, and the area that the tickets were being given out and the stadium were quite far apart. So you had to kind of rush, get the ticket, and then it was like, I've actually got a ticket for the World Cup final. It's unbelievable. So that sense of joy. Were your seats good? What was the actual area you were in like? Who were you surrounded by?
Yeah, my seat was good. I think any seat is good. The way these stadiums are set up, the Luzhniki Stadium, Miguel Delaney was behind me with Jonathan Liu. So a lot of English journalists around me. Didn't see Daniel McDonald or Joe O'Callaghan, but and Ken Early, they've been generally the journalists on the travels. But I know what you're saying. For the Argentina-Iceland game, I had that dystopian feel of that I was chasing scraps in a huddle of about 100. So I know what that feeling is like. But luckily for the final, it didn't transpire that way. But I did feel with Germany, Argentina, Brazil out of the competition, those big countries, journalists wouldn't be here. So luckily enough, little old Ireland got in. Tell
us about the atmosphere then, because there's a pre-match which is completely different from the rest of the tournament, and sometimes it helps, sometimes it hinders. What was it like yesterday?
Well, first of all, the branding was different, which I was really taken aback by. The whole branding around the stadium was based around the final. That was really impressive, and it was a beautiful day until the thunder and lightning started, which I thought, though, actually added to the occasion. Ronaldinho came out and started playing the bongo drums after Will Smith had sang at the closing ceremony, and there was an opera singer as well. So it was just a brilliant atmosphere, really electric. The fans from both France, Croatia, and the neutrals, a lot of Brazilians, a lot of Russians, saw Mexicans there as well. Saw some people from Japan. It was fitting. I've been to thankfully to a lot of big sporting events. It was just fitting atmosphere for the occasion. So it definitely, the whole place was lifted. And then even after the game, there was a huge fireworks display from the stadium through the city. So it was a pretty amazing day.
There's a sense that yesterday feels like the start of something from a French perspective, doesn't it, John?
I would think so. It reminds me a lot of 20 years ago. The only other time they won the World Cup, they won it with similar enough a striker that didn't have the best of tournaments, Guy Varsh, and we had Giroud not having a shot on goal all tournament. That is just madness, really, when you think about it. And it just reminds me of that team. Disciplined, huge team spirit, well organised. Some quality players in there, some young players like you had Henry and Trezeguet back in the day, even Mbappe now. And then they just flourished into year 2000 when they played better football and won the tournament. So I can see a hugely bright future for French football after they got the job done yesterday. I got the feeling it was like the 1974 final, if anybody remembers that or has read about it. Holland and West Germany, when Holland were the much better team, but were 2-1 down at the end of the first half and didn't come back. And I felt Croatia were the better team in the first half. We're unlucky that France, I thought Griezmann bought that free kick for the first goal, which came off Mandzukić's head, then the subsequent free kick and into the net. First ever own goal scored in a World Cup final. And then you had the hugely controversial penalty decision by Nestor Pitana. First ever time VAR was used. That is so 50-50. There's a lot of differing opinion about it. Graham Poll was one of the people coming in favour of the decision. But just the drama of him going to the VAR and the drama after the own goal, and then that France, Griezmann said afterwards in the press conference that he took the penalty like he was playing in the normal match. And you could see that by the way he sent Subasic the wrong way. So after playing such good football in Perisic with that excellent equaliser, Croatia are 2-1 down at half-time, probably thinking to themselves, how did this happen? Bit of shell shock, and then the second half, on the break, France get 2 goals, one through Pogba, who I thought had a magisterial game, thought he was amazing. And Mbappe, well, second ever, youngest player ever after Pelé, 60 years later to score as a teenager at a World Cup final, actually the only other ever teenager to score. So Hugo Lloris had a brain freeze to allow Mandzukic in for the 6th goal of the game, and then the thunders and the rain was lashing down by that stage, and we had that kind of humorous ceremony afterwards with Vladimir Putin having the only umbrella in the place.
Typical. A couple of things. The penalty decision obviously is something, unfortunately, that we are going to have to continuously talk about. I was trying to look back and find exactly what the rules, the International Football Association Board, or whatever it is, IFAB, who set the rules and laws of world football, in their meeting in 2017, they said they were going to talk about handball and trying to make consistency around the ruling, but they didn't come to an agreement. And so it's still there as something that they're going to continue to talk about. And in the office today, we were arguing about it. You say that Graham Poll said it was a good decision. Mark Clattenburg is in the back, I think, of the Telegraph today, or whatever paper he's working for, saying it wasn't a penalty. Nobody knows is the main issue here. Nobody knows definitively that this is a penalty or it isn't a penalty. And that's the most annoying thing really about a World Cup final, because it would have been really interesting to see Croatia maintain parity for a portion of time, either side of half-time, and then see what type of game becomes after that.
Yes, and I think you're trying to look for, in a split-second, intent on the part of the player. And it's very difficult in a split second to determine if... I think with Henry, we knew there was an intent there, back in the Stade de France back in 2009. With Perisic, you just don't know in that split second, is there intent? Is there a deliberate intent? Or is this ball to hand rather than hand to ball? And if the referees are in disagreement about it, then what hope do we have around it? But it is a shame in a way. Dejan Lovren was once again speaking after the game in the mix zone, and he was just saying that it effectively turned the match. Zlatko Dalic was not wanting to get into a blame game with referees. He was very magnanimous in his comments, but once again said that it shouldn't happen in a World Cup final. The decision of that magnitude should be made, but of course it had to be made once the referee decided to go to VAR. Luka Modric was a little bit more guarded, didn't want to get into a discussion about it, just said he was sad about what happened. Obviously he won the Golden Ball, but you never really felt that Croatia could come back at half-time after going 2-1 down the way France had played, which was not very well. And then France obviously had that cushion then for the second half and could capitalise on that then.
Griezmann finished second in the Golden Ball. Did Mbappe not get in that top 3 because he was winning the young player? How does that whole awards thing work, John?
From my understanding, Mbappe could have been in both. A bit like Tony Kelly for the hurlers, or a few years ago for Clare. So I was surprised Griezmann's not even in my team of the tournament. I thought he played well in the semi-final and final, but to me, Pogba was the player yesterday. Pogba was the man who was everywhere, who ran the show for France and showed what Paul Pogba can be on the greatest stage, whatever about his inconsistent club form. So, it was Modric, Hazard and Griezmann, I think in that order for the Golden Ball. Thibaut Courtois for the Golden Glove. I was wondering, there was such a delay in announcing this. I wondered, did they have Hugo Lloris on the sheet and take him off the sheet after that mistake that he made and put Courtois on it? And Spain, the fair play team, which is something that it feels like about a year ago that they were in the tournament. It was just mad to see Macron there, the president of Croatia, who brought a lot of colour to the tournament, and then just Conor McGregor, obviously, as we've seen, was there as a guest of Vladimir Putin and giving him lots of praise, which has caused a little bit of controversy already. It's just a French team that I think Deschamps said after the game in the press conference, that he said 2 things to the players after the game. He said that you as a 23-man squad will have this binded together for you for life. And he said the second thing he said to them was that whatever you do in your careers and whatever success you achieve, you will never top winning a World Cup final. He also said to the press that the Argentina game was the key moment in their World Cup. He said the group stage is more difficult than the knockout stage, which is an interesting thing to say. And he said then that the trigger for their performances further in the tournament, to win the World Cup, was that game against Argentina, because he felt that as a big nation, whatever about and beating Messi in that was a pivotal moment in their progression. So interesting things. His press conference was gate crashed by the French players, which is really, really funny. They all just ran in unexpectedly and just started dousing him, presumably with champagne, which was just a mad thing to see happen after a World Cup final. And then what happens is they just all walk past you. So they walk past you with their kit bag and their medals around their neck. The Croatian players first. Some of them stop and talk. Dejan Lovren was great. Says he wants to progress now with Liverpool the next season. And very defiant. Sad but proud. I think he's bittersweet feeling for Dejan Lovren. Luka Modric a little bit more quiet. Said that the golden ball is not something he's just going to discard because he didn't win a World Cup. He appreciates the magnitude of winning a golden ball. His English is very good. And then France come through. Saw Rafa Varane with the trophy, clutching it like a newborn child. And that was just an interesting thing to see 2 foot away. And then the rest of the French players coming through. But Paul Pogba was the happiest man I think I've ever seen, just jumping around and having a crack. And deservedly so after the amazing win. Was
Pogba's finals and final performance enough to get him into your team in the tournament?
Well, he was already in it. When I put it up on Twitter a couple of days ago. Now, it has changed because I really do believe, guys, that people can say what they want about games in a tournament. The final is when you need to perform, because the final is when the pressure's on the most. I could see tears from Ivan Rakitic before the game started yesterday. I could see Antoine Griezmann just taking in a bit of breath. And the final for me is a game where you have to deliver if you want to be in a team of a tournament or seen as a great player. So to me, N'Golo Kante is now off my team because of yesterday's performance. Had a poor game, and Hugo Lloris is out of my team because of yesterday's display, because that could have cost France a World Cup if the circumstances had been different or that happened in the first half, for example.
Let me just read out the team that you had before. So your team was Lloris, Vrsaljko, Godin, Varane, Hernandez, Kante, Modric, Pogba, Hazard, Coutinho, Mbappe. A 4-3-3 with Hazard and Coutinho playing Mbappe. Would that be right?
Yeah, kind of like Olivier Giroud style, no striker. That's a little bit unfair. Maybe a false nine really situation. Although Kylian Mbappe is a striker, so he'd probably be a Coutinho or him would be in that maybe central role. Hazard on the left, maybe Mbappe on the right, and Coutinho then in a central role. But I didn't really feel there was any great strikers at this World Cup. So Diego Costa was out of the tournament pretty early.
If Lloris is gone, that means Courtois in instead?
Courtois is in, and I've dropped Vrsaljko and I've dropped Conte. So I've put in Courtois, I put in an English player, Kieran Trippier at right back, and I put in Rakitic in midfield for 2 Croatian players. So the team is Courtois, Trippier, Varane, Godin, Hernandez, Modric, Rakitic, Pogba, Mbappe, Coutinho, and Hazard. I'm sure people have different opinions, but for me, Rakitic, I wanted to add him because I think that, okay, there are times in the tournament he didn't play as well as others, but I think he's symbolic of, and he scored 2 penalties in shootouts to win matches. I think he's symbolic of Croatia's progression to a final with Modric in the team. And I think that Trippier had a good tournament at right back, excellent set pieces. So, and Courtois, well, how could I disagree with people who approved the Golden Glove, although I thought Jordan Pickford had a good tournament as well. So I'm pretty happy now with the 11 I've settled upon.
We had Dave and Nathan pick their team on Friday, and it landed them in quite the hot water on Twitter over the
John
weekend.
Stones and Sherry Chef. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So they had Pickford in goals. Hernandez at left back is the consensus. Stones, Varane also a consensus. And Trippier is in their team. He's in your team now today as well. They had Kante. That was, in fairness, I think everybody would have had Kante in their team up to the final. Modric and Blaise Matuidi, in retrospect, looks like a complete outlier when you consider that he's probably the 3rd best midfielder that France had over the course of the tournament. Hazard, Mbappe and Sheahan, just because it's a World Cup. Sheahan was probably worth his spot. We've got some comments on this as well. Trippier ahead of Pavard. You've lost all credibility. I mean, I don't know about that. Stones, his lack of concentration led to Croatia winner. I think Stones is worse. Come on, lads. Switched off for the Croatia winner. Stones. Lovren instead of Stones. How the hell does the top scorer not get into it? Are you for real? Harry Kane's not in anybody's team.
Come on, Harry Kane does not deserve to be there.
Now Harry Kane, explain the logic. Ye proverbial Stones out of that. Stones shouldn't make the 23, never mind the first 11. Not Mbappe, he isn't even a striker. It should be Suarez, Cavani partnership up front. And this probably the first time there's no place for Messi or Ronaldo, even though I thought Ronaldo did okay. It says up the banner 2013.
I actually don't mind their Matuidi suggestion. That's the one controversial bit there. Well, I see the comments actually didn't actually point him out that much. Final, I guess.
I think that, like, in retrospect, Pogba's tournament was sensational.
Sure. After yesterday, Pogba kind of swerves to the right on the motorway and overtakes Blaise Matuidi quite comprehensively.
John, this is our last time talking to you from Moscow here on OTB AM. So your final thoughts on, I guess, the trip of a lifetime? Well,
thank you for your support, and thank you for all the people who sent in kind comments over the month. I've had an amazing journey. Very privileged and lucky to be here working. Just final thoughts that I thought the host nation were, whatever about governments, I thought the people here were just fantastic hosts. And having seen 6 cities and having been to 17 games, it's not a Potemkin village. It's a country like any other. Ordinary people are like each other everywhere you go in the world. And I think what the World Cup brings is that beautiful meld of colour and belonging from all parts of the globe, and it's something that I would recommend to anybody as a fan to go and see. I went as a fan in Germany 12 years ago, so obviously Qatar is a bit of an unknown, and the USA, 48 teams, and the Mexico and Canada are far places to go, and that's a long way into the future. I wish we were here as the Republic of Ireland. I wish we'd made it. And the best memories, the memories are just of attacking football, probably decent refereeing, I have to say. A lot of the games were allowed flow. Great stories. The Argentina soap opera was an amazing story. Germany being knocked out. Brazil's failure when they were expected to succeed. France being the best team overall, I would say. And really exciting games from Spain, Portugal to Belgium, Japan. And then brilliant stories from Mexico to Croatia. So just a magical experience, one I'll never forget. And I think the biggest experience, or the thing that will never leave me the most, was that spontaneous outpouring of emotion on the streets of Moscow when Russia beat Spain. It was just incredible, and I don't think it's been experienced here since 1945. It was of that a magnitude. It's almost like something like that happens, which wasn't expected to happen, and you just leave your home and you go onto the streets and you see what happens. And I think that summed up what the World Cup was, and I think that it's been very successful. And I also think that it's rekindled our love and joy with the international game, which has been a little bit in the shadow of the club game in recent years. And I think it's reminded us of the purity of the international game and why we love it so much, and why we've always loved it since we were young people. So bring it on again in 4 years. And I think actually that is only every 4 years is also makes it as special as it is. So yeah, thankful.
John, a brilliant tribute to the World Cup after a brilliant month of work from you. Congratulations, thanks very much, and safe home.
Thank you so much, Ger and Eoin and everybody else. Thank you.
John Duggan, our man in Moscow, for one final dispatch from the front line.
It was great. It was a fantastic journey. I felt that, we were kind of a little GoPro on John Duggan's shoulder for the entire journey, kind of from the night trains to the lack of vodka, from the hats to the non-alcoholic mules. I've certainly had an emotional trip just by sitting here and watching John Duggan tour around Russia for us. It was beautiful. Of course, you got to wait 8 years now for another Summer World Cup.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Unless they pull it, they're not going to pull it at this stage. They would have done it by now, wouldn't they?
Well, they literally announced the other day that it's going to be happening in November.
What I mean is, like, unless there is like a mad kind of sea change of, okay, we can't put it in Qatar now, but...
Yeah, well, let's all trust in FIFA's moral values.
Yes, that's not going to happen. So the Super 8s are up and running. We're going to talk with Sean O'Sullivan and Bryan McGuigan in just a minute. First off, how super are the Super 8s? The Sunday newspaper review obviously discussed the new format's first matches.
It was a rather underwhelming start to the era of the Super 8s, Kieran, wasn't it? I know you were in Cork yesterday.
Well, that was even more underwhelming, unfortunately. I can't think of a smaller crowd for... Like, it was an All-Ireland quarter-final, certainly since the All-Ireland quarter-final era has come in. It's the smallest crowd per game. You've had double bills, but they've had 20,000 plus. So the Super 8's atmosphere was just watching it from remote, down in Cork on the TV, and it seemed particularly very muted. Yeah, but Declan was just having this argument about, well, should they have the quarter-final round games in Croke Park, I think you have to have at least one game in Croke Park. Whether it should be the opening game of it or not, there has to be. I mean, if you're a Kerry Galway player today, you need to be playing it. It is a reward in itself, like getting to play in Croke Park, whether you came through the provincials or whether you came through the qualifiers. You have to play a game there. But unfortunately, the way it worked out yesterday, like there was 53,000, but you would have had, if you were a Scammon fan, you weren't sticking around.
No, well, there was no stage of the afternoon at which there were 53,000.
Proper bill. Like let's say when Donegal and Dublin played in an All-Ireland quarter-final 2 years ago, you had Tyrone Mayo. Before that, I would say you had a lot of overlap for the second half of that game. Dubs would have wanted to go in and see that. Whereas with Roscommon and Tyrone, it was different. I mean, Tommy Conlon had a colour piece and he counted the amount of dubs that were in the hill. Was it 15 minutes before throwing? I think it was 49 dubs had gone to the bother. Interestingly, and you have like that game was in Dublin, which would be considered, it's got the most fanatical football following in the country, along with arguably Mayo. Cork, hurling, massive. How little neutrals were attracted to the bill, that's surprising that there isn't more of an effort maybe made to attract more of the local people.
There you go. That's the lad speaking on the Sunday newspaper review. And of course, you should subscribe to that podcast. You can check it out at offtheball.com. Now, Sean O'Sullivan is with us this morning to get the Kerry perspective on a very disappointing start to the Super 8. Sean, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger. Morning, Eoin.
So, Eoin isn't that worried just yet because he believes that the team can turn it around in 6 or 7 days. He might just be fronting. I can't tell. What's your take?
Yeah, I think Eoin has been a little bit confident and more confident than I am anyway, Ger, after yesterday. It was, Kerry are in trouble. Kerry are in trouble, there's no doubt about it. They would have been going up to Dublin yesterday expecting to come out of there with a win. There's no doubt about that. There was a lot of talk down in the county during the week of maybe it was going to be a particularly run-of-the-mill game for Kerry, that they weren't going to have any major issues, that Galway would put it up to them for a certain amount of time and Kerry would come out the other side and get their first win in the Super 8s. But I personally didn't feel like that. I just felt that, and look, it's been well documented that Kerry weren't really tested going up to Dublin. Whereas Galway, even though they hadn't set the world alight in beating Roscommon and Mayo, at least they had two decent championship battles under their belt. And you could tell early on, lads, that, I know from playing and I know from watching games, you could tell very early on that Kerry just weren't at it. Now, Galway weren't at it either. I think that's the most disappointing thing from a Kerry point of view. There's no doubt about it, as the game, went on, Galway got better and were the better team overall, deserved the win. But you could tell very early on that Kerry just hadn't got out of the blocks, they hadn't started, and a stale, uninventive start just transpired to stick with them for the whole game, and they've left themselves now with a lot to do.
Do you think Kerry are going backwards, Sean? Like Dick Clerkin was making that point in the newspaper this morning, that they're actually regressing at this point as a result of the evidence that we saw yesterday.
No, I wouldn't agree with Dick. Backwards is a strong statement, Eoin. I don't think they're going backwards. I think that Eamon and his management team are in that a difficult position where he's trying to look down and look into the future and get these young players that we keep talking about into his championship team. You can't throw them all in together. It's just not feasible. It can't happen. So bit by bit, he's putting them in there, and that's going to take time. I suppose we were delighted to see them put up such big wins over Clare and Cork, but let's be honest about it. Kerry are, regardless of who they have on their first 15 at the moment, are so far ahead of those teams. It's a conversation for a different day. But it's now in this Super 8 setup that they were really going to get tested, and they've failed their first test. And backwards, no, I wouldn't agree with that. It's just, yesterday was just, and look, you could put it down to one of those days, but I think there's more to it than that. It just lacked, for me, it lacked leadership, it lacked inventiveness, it lacked creativity, and the one thing it lacked, which I was really surprised at from watching their first two games, was pace and speed. We had an abundance of that in our first two games. And I'm not just talking about in our legs, I'm talking about in our heads, speed of thought, speed of mind. it just wasn't there from the very word go. And in a game, when that doesn't happen from the word go, it's very, very hard to find it.
Kerry lost, they only won 10 of their own 27 kickouts yesterday. It was an area that you can really pinpoint, as well as the pace that you mentioned and as well as the accuracy that Eamon Fitzmaurice mentioned afterwards, as one of the areas where Kerry fell down big time yesterday. That's not going to be an area where Monaghan are too much weaker than Galway next weekend. How did they rectify that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an area where Kerry were, again, going up. You would have thought that, it was an area where we could have excelled in, and we didn't. You could put it down to a lot of things, but again, it was just, I genuinely bring this back to our speed of thought. It just wasn't happening fast enough. Just watching even the movement for Shane Murphy's kickouts was very, very static. And that's one area that they'll definitely have to improve on, is the speed of the movement from our backs in midfield. Shane, there was numerous times where he had the ball down. He wasn't even putting it on the tee. He was ready to go, and he was looking out the field, and just the movement wasn't there. Now, you have to credit Galway for a lot of that. They were right on top of Kerry. They pushed up. They didn't give them breathing space to pop easy ball. Shane would have had a few kickouts that didn't go right for him. So, absolutely, I won't agree 100%. Going up to Clonus next Sunday, Monaghan will watch the video back of Galway and Kerry yesterday, and they'll say, look, this worked for Galway. Put pressure on the kickouts. Don't give Kerry any easy out ball, and we can make hay. So Eamon is going to have to go back to the drawing board there. I know it's only a week, but he's just going to have to go back and see what they can come up with in terms of upping their stats in terms of getting more joy out of their own kickout.
Yeah, definitely. Just to clarify there, I just misspoke. They lost 10 from 27 of their own kickouts. They didn't win 10 from 27. It wasn't quite that bad. Just on the Kieran Donaghy situation, then he wasn't introduced at all yesterday, Sean. Like, we were speaking with Mike Quirk on Friday's show, and I was wondering if he could have a part in the plan A and not just be plan B. Well, he wasn't plan A or plan B yesterday.
Very surprising. Very surprising. I mean, Kieran's 35. He came back into the panel this year. Maybe a little bit surprisingly for people down here. Obviously, the word on the street was that he was told he was going to play a part. It's possibly his last year with the Kingdom. And for him not to see any game time in a game yesterday where it was probably crying out for someone like Kieran, the way it was going for Kerry, especially maybe 5 or 10 minutes into the second half. I can understand the manager giving his team that maybe first quarter of a second half if things aren't going right. But to leave Kieran sitting there when it was, looked like we were struggling. Galway were obviously not giving us any room around the middle of the field, so the other option would have been an out ball into Kieran. A wet day, I remember in the first half, Galway went for a shot, it dropped short, Damien Comer caught it and ended up kicking a point out of it. So it was things like that yesterday on that could have turned out well for Kerry if Kieran had been thrown in. Would we have won the game if we went in? I still don't think so. I just think we just weren't at it across all quarters yesterday. So, he was an option as it wasn't working for our inside line. Like, bar David Clifford, Paul Ganey and James O'Donoghue just never got going yesterday. And even in terms of getting the lads into the game, one particular moment really stands out for me. It was just before half-time. Paul Ganey won the ball around the halfway line. He played a nice ball down the sideline to David Clifford, who won it well. He slipped it back to Ganey, and the next man off Ganey's shoulder, who was only a few yards away, was James O'Donoghue. Our three most dangerous forwards were all in the one small area of the field, passing the ball back and forth to each other. That summed up to me Kerry's performance. Those guys need to be in front of the goal where they're dangerous, and it just didn't happen for them yesterday. It didn't happen for Kerry. And the thing about it is that the few balls that we did get to them one-on-one, David Clifford obviously played well, kicked his scores. Paul Ganey, when he was on the ball, looked dangerous, but it didn't happen enough for us.
Sean, are we talking here about a systems failure? Are we talking about a few key individuals having an off day and therefore that having a more serious impact? Because we had been led to believe that Kerry had found a new style of play, a more attacking style of play that fitted with their traditions and with their skill sets, and that this was a significant leap forward in the evolution of this group of players. So what does yesterday's result / performance mean for where that evolution is at the moment?
It's obviously probably not where we thought it was, Ger. I agree with you 100%. We certainly have found some excellent players in terms of an attacking setup. Sean Shea, David Clifford, to name but a few. Our defensive setup still worries me. I still feel, even yesterday when Galway drove at us and when teams drive at Kerry, and I've mentioned this a few times, writing down here for the Kerry man, we still lack that little bit of a stopper around the middle. Our half back line tends to get drawn out of position, leaving the centre open, which happened as well yesterday. And with the greatest respect to Galway, who are an excellent side, if that was a Dublin, even a Tyrone yesterday, Kerry could have been well out of sight. In fact, we should have been well out of sight. Galway missed a host of chances. So, yeah, it's disappointing that, we're probably not where we're at. Your original question about a systems failure, I think it was a mix of both. It was Galway, again, hats off to Kevin Walsh. He won the sideline battle yesterday. There's no doubt about it. He looked at Kerry's system and he got it spot on. I was at the corresponding league game in Tralee back in February, and I think walking out the gate that day, even though Kerry supporters were trying to dress it up, that we only lost by a goal and that Galway had a full team and we didn't. I think that day leaving Tralee, Kevin Walsh had earmarked Kerry as a potential opponent come the Super 8s. And I think he learned a lot from that day as how to beat us. So I think it was a mix of both, Ger. I think the system Galway won over, there's no doubt about it. And that happens on a day. Look, managers fight their own personal battle off the field in terms of setting their teams up. And Galway won that yesterday. They also won the battles on the field. But in terms of a few fellas having an off day for Kerry yesterday, I would say there was a lot more than a few, Ger. I think you could say maybe 3 guys out of that 15 could genuinely get on the train yesterday evening and say, yeah, I played well yesterday, which going to Clonus is a bonus for us because they'll be hurting this week, and I feel we'll get a reaction up in Clonus next Sunday.
Sean, great stuff. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, lads.
Sean O'Sullivan there, former Kerry footballer, talking to us about his take on the weekend.
Yeah, when I'm thinking about my confidence for next weekend, I do wonder, am I reading a little bit too much into kind of how we've written off Kerry teams in the past when we talk about Sean's teams in the likes of 2009 when they get beaten by those great Cork teams in a number of those years, and suddenly you're in July and you're like, well, Kerry aren't going well at all, there must be something wrong, there must be discontent in the camp.
There was a big row at training and suddenly they're all back on again.
Exactly.
Big row training on Tuesday night.
But the thing is, the reason why that happened, why those turnarounds happen, is because you have a few qualifier games to build the confidence back up. You have a few tomato cans, so to speak, to actually, kind of like Monaghan have had in the qualifiers this year, which has built their confidence up. But you look at what happened last year in the intermittent week between the two Mayo games, and Kerry disimproved. They were worse the second day out against Mayo. There is a possibility that happens this week. They can't get much worse, surely. But from what we've seen in this regime, there's nothing to suggest that the 1 week turnaround is going to be good enough. But in the
space of 40 minutes, you've talked yourself from, woo, we're going to beat Monaghan, into, Jesus, what if this is terminal?
No, the point I'm trying to make is I'm worried that the turnaround won't happen in the space of a week. But what I do know for a fact is that they surely cannot be as bad as they were yesterday.
Well, I mean...
And that's what's giving the confidence.
Yeah, but that's... I don't know, that's like a...
They still got beaten by 3 points after being absolutely woeful last yesterday.
It can't be that bad again, but actually it can be, and that could be their level this season, and this might be one of those years where it's really hard for them. And
might be.
Yeah. All right, so let's bring in some Jim Gavin. Going to get Bryan McGuigan's thoughts in a minute. First, here's Jim Gavin.
Obviously we're playing lots of champions in Donegal, and we saw out there why they are. Very polished side, and if they take their chances, some of the wides they got, might have been a different game going down the stretch. But we controlled it well, and that's a satisfying bit. But overall, we missed a lot of chances, and that simply won't be good enough again the next day. Particularly after the performance that Tyrone had today, after 2 games now, that's probably 7-44. So that's a fair tally in the championship to put up, and we'll have our work cut out next week, I know, but there have been fantastic games in recent times. We've always got a really great reception from Tyrone Gaels, and we're just looking forward to it now, and I know our supporters are as well.
Would you be worried that perhaps Tyrone will have this day marked out possibly from this time last year, and they've very much been looking for vengeance, I suppose, after how Dublin managed to deal with them very, very easily last year?
Vengeance is a strong word. I wouldn't see that in Tyrone's play. Obviously they will go out to probably to right a performance that they didn't get the last day, and that's what you'd expect from any team with a quality side, with a quality manager and management team. So they are moving extremely well, and we're going to have a lot of hard work up there to try and get a performance, and we're just looking forward to a really competitive game now.
Yeah, so Jim Gavin not giving very much away. The commentators were getting very aggrieved by the fact that Dublin were playing keep ball. It was like, oh, you're not allowed to do this. It's not fair. Like, you are. It's totally fine.
Exactly. And
that's what they're going to do because they're the best team in the country and they can do that if they want.
And you're literally going to a team who just hockeyed a team right before you next week. Conserve as much energy as possible. It is quite similar to the World Cup. There's almost a tournament nature to the Super 8s.
Completely.
So I did notice that as well. I was like, what is wrong? The problem with this is potentially Roscommon not closing them down. Like, how, like, is it a unique situation where Dublin could do that to any team? I'd highly doubt it.
Well, they did it to Tyrone last year. Somebody's pointing out they did it after 15 minutes last year against Tyrone because that game was over. It was 1-3, 1-4 to... Was it 1-8 to a point or no score after 15 minutes last year against Tyrone? And I was like, all right, well, we're not going to waste our time doing this.
You do wonder like, you're always trying to nitpick some areas where Dublin might be weak, and you do wonder, like, is somebody like Conor Callaghan back to where he was last year yet? Like, then again, you could use that as a potential area of growth for Dublin, we're probably in third gear for a lot of Saturday night.
They have a lot of growing to do, but there's no guarantee again that growth happens.
Growth will happen, yeah.
You know, like that's so even last year against Mayo, there were times in the games where they just weren't as good as they're very patchy within matches. They try and burn teams off quite quickly, and then they do conserve energy. So, quick look at the tables here. Galway top. It's going to be interesting to see if points differential matters in these tables. Obviously, Kildare and Kerry have no points after the first round. Kildare are at home next week in Newbridge against Galway. That game is 2 o'clock. And then the 4 o'clock game is the Monaghan-Kerry game in Clonus. They're both Sunday matches. So by that stage, Kerry will know exactly what they need to do. If Galway have won that, then Galway are going to top the group more than likely at that point. But if Galway have been beaten, then suddenly everything is back on. And then Tyrone and Dublin both have 2 points. Tyrone, again, the scoring differential here, they absolutely mullered Roscommon. It was not a competition at all, but Tyrone were sensational in that pretty much from the get-go. A team looking very unified and a team looking like they know exactly what they need to do. And then Dublin, just those 5 points to spare at the end against Donegal. Donegal now facing next week a trip to Roscommon. So I'm sure Donegal would like a home game the second to try and just, make it nice and easy on themselves. But so they're do or die for them. Bryan McGuigan is with us this morning. Look like All-Ireland contenders again. This has been quite the turnaround from the defeat in the Ulster Football Championship. What's happened?
Yeah, well, there's obviously a lot of optimism now in Tyrone, but I think this team, the best way for them to go through, unfortunately, through Ulster, getting beaten Ulster, but the best way for them to probably find the right team was by going the back door, and have unearthed a few new players. Mainly Richie Donnelly up front. That's something that Tyrone has always been missing. A good, big, strong target man. Richie Donnelly's been immense for Tyrone this past few games. I also think they've sorted out their goalkeeping issue. They seem to be taking a game at a time between Niall Morgan and Mickey O'Neill. And Niall Morgan's come into his own in this past 2 or 3 games too. He's finding long kickouts. He's finding short kickouts. Now, Sluggan's been a revelation at centre half forward with his link play and been an end of a lot of good scores. But at the end of the day, last year we were in the same situation when we hammered Armagh in the quarter final, and we've seen what happened against Dublin. So we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. We know we're in a good place. We knew if we beat Roscommon, we only really have to win one of our last 2 games. And with the Dublin game being in Omagh and Donegal without McBeardy, things seem to be going in our favour.
Yeah, so how will this team actually match up against Dublin, do you feel, having seen what they've done the last 2 games? We know that those big wins aren't actually going to be the way that they're going to perform against Dublin, but we also know that it gives the forwards in particular a whole heap of confidence heading into this match.
Yeah, we are starting to get the balance right, I hope. I do hope that we do play more people up the field, but we know it's going to be very defensive when you have the ball. Both teams are going to play more or less 15 men behind the ball. But last year we've seen how Dublin were able to hurt us whenever they had the ball. We hope that Tyrone are better at that, especially with Richard Donnelly up front, and we even have a good bench to call on now with Mark Bradley and Lee Brennan hopefully coming back into the fray. So look, it's going to be a great occasion on Saturday night. We just hope that we've lessened the gap between Tyrone and Dublin from last year. It's a big test for this team. But look, we're going the right road. There wasn't 3 or 4 weeks ago everybody was more or less slating Mickey Hart, and you only have to look at. I was down on Saturday and to see the Tyrone support that was down in Croke Park. For a Tyrone team, there wasn't many who usually have good followers to Croke Park. There wasn't a big Tyrone crowd there, so that's maybe the way that Tyrone have been playing. It doesn't get you excited. You've seen the difference between the Armagh and Roscommon match to the Tyrone match which followed it. The atmosphere was just completely dead, and I think the Tyrone supporters have reacted to that by maybe not going to Croke Park the last day. But hopefully last week will excite them a wee bit and take them out in Omagh. I'm sure there'll be a full house there.
Yeah, I'm just looking here at the dimensions. So it's a 25,500 capacity, it says on Wikipedia. So this could all be wrong. But they say the field size is 142 by 86 metres and Croker is 3 metres longer and 2 metres wide. So the pitch sizes aren't really that different, are they?
No, they're not. And you seen when Tyrone got to Croke Park, their running game, their counter-attack style suits Croke Park. So, historically we don't play well in Omagh either. But every time Dublin's come up, we seem to put it up to them. So, but luckily, moving away from Tyrone, you'd have to look at the Roscommon performance and where do they go from here. And this was what was going to happen if a team loses. What happens to lose the next game and then they have a two week gap? Well, they can't qualify for the All-Ireland semi-final. It's more or less a dead rubber game in the last game.
Yeah, and Dublin at that point might be, if results go a certain way, in need of a particularly big win. And they'll have that game at Croke Park against the Roscommon team who are already out. So, it hasn't quite been worked out properly just yet. You can see that there are huge difficulties with the scheduling of it, with the atmosphere in the ground in the first one. Maybe if those games had been in provincial grounds, it would have been much better. But the quality of the football that Tyrone have played and their ability to rescue the season is obviously something that Mickey Hart knows a lot about from his time with you guys. Is there any parallels between that team and this team, or is this team still just short 3 or 4 of the players that they would need to be genuine All-Ireland contenders?
I don't know if you could compare that team to us because maybe the way we play and the difference in the forward lines at that time. But Tyrone, you've seen Kerry yesterday, and I think the main thing in today's game is getting your defensive structure right. Tyrone have been working this past 2 or 3 years and getting that right, and they are coming good at it. But if you have good quality forwards, those forwards will look after themselves. If you get the defensive structure right, well then the forwards will cause damage at the other side. Kerry, I don't think are at that level defensively, but forward-wise they have a good division up front, but they haven't got that right at the back. Tyrone have. They're going to be a hard obstacle for anybody that they're playing, but as I say, you would have took this 3 or 4 weeks ago because, the team wasn't going well. There was a lot of unrest. You only have to look at the likes of Ronan O'Neill, who come off against Monaghan, and you seen him shaking his head, been angry at Mickey Hart. Now he knows that he's going to be coming on. He seems to have bought in this, and he's making a difference whenever he comes on. So the whole camaraderie in the team, the spirit in the team has changed, and that comes with winning.
Yeah, for sure. What did you make of the Dubs' performance against Donegal? Obviously, as somebody who kind of is looking at that match thinking, okay, we've got these guys up next.
Yeah, well, it probably was just a good professional job from Dublin. They went out, they done their job. They seemed to be happy enough to get a 5 or 6 point victory. I think the main thing they didn't want was to get any injuries. They didn't give away any of their game plan. You never seen, it wasn't a typical Dublin performance. And also you seen that they have a strong panel, and when the teams come out, and young Merchant, I think, was starting. You'd never hear tell of this fella, but you'd have to ask if it was an All-Ireland semi-final, would Jim Gavin have risked him? I think it was the fact it was a Super 8s, and it wasn't a knockout situation. He was able to throw boys when they got. But again, when their main players weren't playing, different fellas stepped up. Brian Howard, I thought he was immense on Saturday. So. It shows that their plans get even stronger. Even Conor Costello come on and made an impact. So it looks as if Dublin's still going to be the team to beat. But we will see how we get on Saturday night to see how close we got to them.
Do you think Donegal, like you mentioned there, Dublin would have been happy enough with the margin of victory, a slender enough win without getting out of third gear. Do you think Donegal were happy enough with that sort of defeat as well, not to lose the game, but once it became clear that they were going to lose the game, to try and hold it at the 5 or 6 points? Because obviously they saw what happened to Tyrone last year. It's so quick for Dublin to turn it on and turn a healthy win into an absolute destruction of a team. And given this structure, a destruction could mean the end of your season in terms of confidence when you've got to turn it around in 7 days.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think Donegal went up to get a slender defeat, but just the way the game panned out, it seemed to be that they were just playing for pride, more or less, in the last 20 minutes. I do think McGregor's been a massive loss for them, and they're going to have to maybe change their game, because they do have to have Michael Murphy, I think, playing up front. And I know you can't play Michael Murphy up front all the time because you need him out the field, but we're going to have to see him in 10-15 minute spurts up front to change the dynamic of their play, because Jamie Brannan's been great so far this year for Donegal, but I don't think he's a player that can do it up there on his own. He does need another fella up there. So look, I think the Super 8 have been hard on the provincial winners. I think the fact that they play each other in the first round, you see the knee-jerk reactions. Even if I was listening to Sean O'Sullivan there, and we're talking about Kerry, and 2 or 3 weeks ago we were calling them All-Ireland contenders. Now they're in trouble. But I think a week's a long time in football, and especially a week's a long time in Super 8s. If those teams win next week, then they're back in the hunt.
Just a quick question on Galway and the Paddy Tally influence there, because you mentioned Sean there, and people are going to be talking a lot this morning about Kerry and their deficiencies yesterday, but credit has to go to Galway and how they shut them down. And I wonder, Galway look in a very healthy position now to get into an All-Ireland semi-final. Against a Tyrone, against a Dublin, do you think Paddy Tally and Kevin Walsh could put their heads together to find a way to make Dublin and Tyrone look a lot more ordinary than they are?
Yeah, well, I do believe that out of the provincial winners, if Tyrone was playing any of those teams, they would rather play Kerry than maybe play Galway, because they play a similar sort of style, and Paddy knows the style of Tyrone play. He's brought it into Galway, but I think it's been disrespectful to maybe Kevin Walsh to plant it all on Paddy Tally's lap. I do believe that Kevin Walsh still calling the shots, and Paddy's tweaking it a wee bit, but yesterday, I do think that with the weather conditions, it might only be a small thing, but this past 5 or 6 weeks, teams have really been training and playing in the blistering heat, dry ball. Yesterday was a big difference, and I think that suited the Galway style of play. You just seen Kerry were so sloppy in their play, and wee things were just missing. That was down to the conditions. Was Galway, it just suited the way they play, getting their hand in, getting their body on the line. And then they, up front, had Ian Burke, Comer and Shane Walsh, who were the difference. And I think Ian Burke's been a massive addition to the Galway team. I know he didn't start against Mayo, but when he came on, he was the difference between the team. And I'm actually a bit surprised that you have a team like Cara Finn who are dominant this past 3 years in the All-Ireland series, and they've only one player playing for them. You take the Cross McGlen teams, how they were so dominant, and they really were the main players for Armagh, whereas they have a Carfin team there, probably played the best club football there's been in this 20 years, and there's only one player playing for them.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? All right, good stuff, Brian. Thanks a million, and enjoy the build-up this week. It's going to be something special.
Yeah, no bother, it's okay.
Bryan McGuigan there giving us some thoughts from Tyrone ahead of that game in Omagh next weekend. Of course, OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Obviously a big hurling match yesterday as well. At that one for us was Tommy Walsh. Here's his post-match thoughts.
The difference is this time is that Kilkenny, we've seen them do it time and time again. They come back early in the second half and they do damage. This time Limerick didn't let them, or was it just that Kilkenny weren't firing on all cylinders today?
Yeah, no, I thought that was one of the best performances we had this year, and I thought it was just attacking, where both sets of forwards were really on top, and there was a lot of space. There always is in Thurles. People seem to find it in the backs, like to spreading it out and hitting the diagonal ball, which forwards love. And I thought, I suppose, in the first half half especially, I thought Kilkenny did very well to hold out, because the Limerick forwards were just running everywhere. And like, if you give it to Kilkenny, really, like, it looked like they were gone dead and buried again, and they came back and drew with this. I think it was the 70th minute was still level, and that's when Tom Morrissey stepped up again, and young Peter Casey, who was a fabulous underage career, and he's got the last free, I suppose. Paul Murphy fouled him, and it was kind of a 50-50 one, really, and that put him 2 points in the lead. But I think for the mental side of things, this is a big game for these Limerick players, not just for this year, but going forward.
All right, interesting stuff as ever from Tommy yesterday, speaking with Maura Trassa. Tommy in the room, and Tommy on the TV as well for you there. So, I don't know, the Super 8s, a lot of people giving out about the start of them. It feels like it's the type of thing that, with good scheduling and having been through it, you should be able to fix. So long as there isn't that's it, it's done now. We're not changing it for the whole 3 years. Like, one game at Croke Park is guaranteed for everybody, right? Does it say the first round is guaranteed? Does it say the first weekend?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so you could make the last games.
Yes.
Or the middle games where everybody still has some hope.
That's the thing. There's going to be an element of a dead rubber potential
every year.
Yeah. So would you rather have the potential of a dead rubber in Croke Park, or would you rather have it in a provincial ground? The thing is, you could make a decision on the week. Like, if it's set for Croke Park, it's the last round of fixtures, we'll put a dead rubber and a meaningful match on the same ticket, and a dead rubber and a meaningful match on the other ticket on the Saturday.
Yeah, they seem to have this kind of, you're going to play Saturday one week, Sunday, and so...
Actually, I said it, sorry. Yeah.
But maybe you don't have to.
No, sorry, I said it, but you can't do that for the last round of games, because you have to play them concurrently. It would be slightly unfair. They are doing that this year, obviously. They are playing the games at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's why you can't play them in Croke Park, obviously.
It's a fair point. Definitely the games in Croke Park are getting swallowed up by the size of the stadium. The stadium's too big for matches to seem competitive when there's only 30,000 there, or 40,000. It's unfortunate, but that's the fact.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Like, you do wonder what that capacity would have been like at the weekend, or what the attendance would have been like both days of the weekend if they were straight knockout games in the quarter-final. Even with the World Cup, I dare say they would have been a hell of a lot higher. You would have had probably a lot more Kerry fans travelling up, because I presume a lot of them are looking at the looming trip to Clonus next weekend, and they're like, well, I'm only going to go to Dublin, or I'm going to go to Clonus. Yeah. A lot of them will go to neither, of course. You know, you can tar Kerry fans with that brush if you want, but they are both extremely long journeys. They are both inconvenient times for people who have to be up to go to work at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. The same goes for Galway fans. I know they were there in fine voice yesterday, but it did seem like a low turnout from all parties really yesterday. A bit more vocal at the end of the first game, I felt. Of course, Kildare only have to travel up the road to get to Croke Park, but a huge Monaghan roar when McManus kicked the winning point and Beggan kicked over that last point yesterday. So there was like vocal travelling support for the first game, but it could have been a hell of a lot better. And you do feel if it was knockout, if there was more peril involved.
I think that if those games, if those games were in smaller venues, maybe there doesn't need to be any Super 8s in Croke Park.
Maybe not.
What's the point? Why do All-Ireland quarterfinals have to be in Croke Park?
There is kind of a sense that once you're in Croke Park, you've arrived. It's like, all right, the championship starts here. And maybe that's just clinging to tradition.
But do we need to change that a little bit?
Maybe we do.
Wouldn't it be much better if that Galway Kerry game was in a full Gaelic grounds in Limerick?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been sensational?
It would have been amazing. Yeah, there's no question. Like, you're right. The only reason why...
Dublin, Donegal have been better in Clonus, Kildare, Monaghan, better in Navan. Like, it's hard to make a case that any of these games actually benefited really from the fact that they were in a not full and more empty than full Croker.
Yeah, it's true. No, everything you say there, I agree with. And the point I'm making there, I admit, is clinging to sentimentality. I'm clinging to the notion of, all the years of like, Munster Championship down, time to go to Croke Park. And that's all I'm clinging to here. And maybe that's what the GAA are clinging to as well. Maybe tradition is important, but I agree with you. What the points you're making outweigh the argument of tradition, because a new tradition could emerge. Just because tradition is tradition doesn't mean you can improve tradition and create new traditions.
We also spend so much money fixing up those stadiums right around the country that there should be some sense of return for that. And again, that kind of creeping sense that seems to be at large if you look at Twitter and the columnists and listen to people talking, that Croke Park is a centralised organisation as opposed to this diffuse, made up by thousands of different parts, you would definitely have a much better sense of that if those games had taken part all right around the country. If the carnival was rolling into Limerick and Navan, and so counties who aren't actually involved.
Yeah.
There's actually a massive, and then you also get the counties who are involved getting games as well. That would be this massive flowering of the Super 8s into something that's decentralised and properly representative of the 32 counties that the games are played in on the island.
Sure. Like in the GAA's defence, what they're probably looking at when they set up the Super 8s is some of the backlash to 2014 and the American football game in Croke Park and Kerry versus Mayo being pushed to the Gaelic grounds. Granted, that's an All-Ireland semi-final, but are they looking at the fixtures and saying, right, Connacht winner versus Munster winner, there's a chance that could be Kerry versus Mayo? Like, there'd be absolute war if we didn't put that game in Croke Park, just like there was when that All-Ireland semi-final replay wasn't allowed to be played in Croke Park.
Yeah, but ultimately, that ended up being a brilliant experience.
It did.
Like, they benefited, added to the occasion. All-Ireland semi-final replays tend to be really good anyway, but like, let's get used to this and let's try it a bit. Okay, I just want to move on because obviously we'll get back to the Super 8s repeatedly now for the next couple of weeks. Games this weekend, a weekend off for the All-Ireland hurling semi-finals, then the final round of Super 8s, some of which look like they're more than likely are going to be dead rubbers at this point. If Kildare don't win, for example, they're out. If Roscommon don't win, they're out after the first round of games as well.
Well, Kerry will obviously need to beat Kildare on the last day, so wouldn't be a dead rubber from
a Kerry perspective.
Yeah, even if both sides lose this weekend.
Security guards around him. I'm just looking there at his arms because I was looking at Rafa Nadal's arms. He's got smaller arms than Rafa Nadal at the moment. I mean, you definitely, I don't know if you saw Nadal, but his left arm, Nadal had this muscle at the top of his forearm, like here, which I'd never seen before. I'd never seen on a human being before. His arm also looked like twice the size of his right arm. But there was this one in particular, obviously, like he's got these weird bulges here that like you've seen traditionally that he would have been, oh, look at me, I'm Rafa Nadal. But there was like a special muscle that looked, have you seen that before?
I presume.
Do you expect there to be a muscle there?
Yeah, well, it's your forearm
well
muscle.
Defined.
It's your forearm, like it's just above the joint almost.
Like below your elbow. I mean, he's a bit old for it this stage, right? You're capable of that one. You'd be looking around going, oh man, this is no good.
No, yeah, it's all rap. It's only the kids like rap these days, sure.
We're not allowed to talk to any of those people. So next, here he is on Pogba. Now, so this is him at the World Cup, right? He was a guest of Vladimir Putin. There he is in a suit. Here he is now, the Instagram message. Today I was invited to the World Cup final as a guest of Russian President Vladimir Putin. This man is one of the greatest leaders of our time, and I was honoured to attend such a landmark event alongside him. Today was an honour for me, Mr. Putin. Thank you and congratulations on an amazing World Cup. And then something in Cyrillic. Didn't get the translation for the Cyrillic bit there. It was all very well, perfectly typed out and scripted. Not the me and my bro, Vladimir, that you might expect for him. So it was almost as if, what's your message going to be here, Mr. McGregor? Let's just make sure that we can, your password. What's next? Okay, so these are his thoughts on Trump, right? So just so you know exactly which side he is. This is from November 2015. This is beginning with him responding to the US president's criticism of Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, he said that she didn't have the fist bump.
She didn't have the what?
You know, the bump before you start the fight? She didn't do it.
It's easy for someone that's not in there to comment, but it's different when you're in there. The emotions are high. So it is what it is. You either want to touch gloves or don't. That means nothing. So Donald can shut his big fat mouth. I don't give a about Donald Trump.
I don't really understand the election. It's a weird kind of thing for me, but I am bang in the middle of New York City and I'm witnessing firsthand the crowd storming up and down the street and the chaos that's going on. But I think, I'm not really sure what way to take of it. I mean, I'm not from around here. Maybe Donald won't be so bad in there. Who knows? But I don't really feel anything changes. I mean, it's just essentially it's just like a fight. Someone wins, someone loses, and then you wake up and then the day is everyone's life carries on. It seems like the biggest, most important thing at that moment in time, but then you wake up and the day just carries on and it's the same. So I wish him well, see what he does.
Yeah, so he changed his mind after Trump got elected there to, he can shut his big fat mouth to, and I mean, obviously, we poured scoring on Rory McIlroy for playing golf with Donald Trump. You can't be really taking Vladimir Putin's invite to the World Cup either, without expecting people to think, what the hell are you doing? But anyway, we do expect, if McGregor ever fights again, that really the only fight that anybody wants to see at this stage is going to be against Khabib. Where's Khabib from? Well, there he is. There's Khabib at the World Cup. Did they meet? We don't know. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff there. Childhood dream come true is the only bit that I can actually read that's not in Russian. So Conor McGregor had a good weekend, all told.
Yeah, he did. Very good. Like, what was he eating on the plate? Was it like oysters or something?
Don't know. It didn't look very nice.
Like, it didn't look very nice. No,
didn't look like oysters. It looked like some kind of bad pasta.
Yeah.
No.
Like the funny
pasta shapes you give to a child.
After Vladimir Putin takes his passport, he's there just sitting in a row behind him, taking a picture of him eating the oysters and posts it on Conor McGregor's account. McGregor's like, that's just not even funny. I can't delete that because it doesn't even look like a prank.
Putin's retirement gig is going to be as a social media intern for the Mac Life.
Yeah, he should. It's his next move. It's a big step up from the kind of purveyor of all that is good and great in the Russian Empire.
We want to talk a little bit about the Irish athletics. An amazing weekend at the Under-20 World Championships. A bunch of stuff, including silver in high jump, the relay team also winning a silver. Haven't had one of their star sprinters not be able to take part on the morning. We still came home second. Sensational run, really. And here's the relay team talking to Irish athletics afterwards.
We're here with Molly Scott, Gina Moses, Ciara Neville and Patience Magula, world silver medalist, a historic achievement for Ireland. Molly, let's start with...
Yeah, I was really nervous in the car room, but when I got down onto the track I tried to calm down, it's such a lovely day, so I was like, okay, I think we can definitely get a medal, and I just tried to focus on my back and get the baton to Gina, and it all worked out really well.
It was all smooth. Gina, as always, rocketing up that back straight. What was going through your mind?
Run, Gina, run. You have to catch the girl on the girl. I have to catch the girl on the girl. Get as close to her as possible. Just give Ciara a better chance to get some patience. But yeah, I was just thinking run fast, Gina. That's what you can do. But yeah, it was good anyway.
And excellent. Ciara, you were a late drafting after missing the heat yesterday. Any sort of nerves about the things just drafting into this squad?
Yeah, definitely. I was way more nervous in the stand watching it yesterday, cheering them on. I felt like I was out there myself, but I was so happy that I could fit in today and attack the bend and stay close to the best chance possible.
And Patience, what was in your mind once you got that bet?
I was really fun. Catch that German guard. I was trying so hard to catch the German guard, but just got away. I didn't mean that shit.
And there is obviously a fifth member of the team who unfortunately wasn't able to line up with him, so just a word for Rashida.
Yeah, Rashida, well, she ran an amazing leg yesterday to get us into the final, even though she had actual pain while she was running, and she kept going. And also to Lauren Roy, who's been helping us all week, and also who was part of the squad.
The medal, but did you really believe that this was possible? That you
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and over the years, we've had so much disappointment, EOIF, it went wrong. European Juniors, it went wrong. World Juniors, and now we finally got a medal with the last year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so they're going to have a good time. Suddenly Irish sprinting is amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous. It's like one thing to have one top-class sprinter when the world became accustomed to the name Gina Akpa-Moses last year, but then to have a relay team and one of its stars, Rashida Adeleke, not even being fit to run. So you've got 5 top-class sprinters all at once. This is completely not out of the blue. There's clearly years and years of hard work gone into this, but it seems out of the blue to people who kind of consume this stuff when it comes to the national championships, side of Irish relay teams, which is going to be an incredible Olympic Games, you'd imagine, for Ireland and